Hello, my dudes, and welcome back to Mikey and the Press. Mike.
I'm David.
And doing our weekly wellness check. How's your wellness?
My wellness is normal.
Good. Good to hear.
Yeah. How about you? How's your wellness?
My wellness is fine.
Oh, are you so well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 through 13.
Yep.
Of the Mega Block.
Mega Block.
Sopranos Mega Block.
Mega Block.
Long time coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Last off, we left at university, and then now we started He Has Risen.
Oh, yeah? Okay, yeah. He Has Risen, and then, yeah, all the way up through an Army of One, season finale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff happens in the back half of this season.
Yeah.
I think it's the first season where there really isn't any filler. Like, it's well-paced. It's like everything. Like, if this season doesn't sell you on the show, then, show's just probably not for you, because this is one of the better seasons. 3, 4, and probably first half of season 5 are like the best stretch. We get some very interesting character development and some plot points. Why don't we go through major plot points that happen? So
Tony gets a new Guma.
Gloria Trillo, that he meets at Melfi's office.
Mm-hmm.
Gigi, right?
Gigi.
Captain. This fucking turkey is like spackle in my bowels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he kicks the bucket.
Yeah. Just like Elvis.
Yeah, and so the beef that Tony has with Ralphie, Cifaretto, Joey Pants, gets somewhat squashed because they were beefing when we last left off because of Ralph beating fucking Tracy to death in the parking lot of the Bing, and Tony hits him.
It's the major disrespect to a made man.
Yeah, can't do that. And so they had all this beef, and that escalated a little bit because they saw each other at the casino, and Ralph refuses to have a drink with Tony, and then Johnny Sack brokers a kind of a agreement between the two of them.
It's such a shitty way to just show up. He said it's good.
Yeah, and then Tony kind of tries to alpha male him. But then Gigi dies, and so Ralph gets bumped up to captain, and so that kind of squashes their beef a little bit. And then I'm trying to think of what other... Carmela goes to see a therapist on her own.
A real therapist
who basically tells her she needs to distance herself from Tony.
Some truth bombs.
Right, so that plot kind of runs in the background a little bit. AJ is getting increasingly in trouble at school.
Mm-hmm.
Meadow is off at college and kind of coming to grips with her father's way of life, but still flirting with that because she starts dating Jackie Jr., who is Jackie Aprile, the reigning boss who died of cancer in the beginning of the series, his son. And initially Carmela is skeptical and Tony is supportive, but then that kind of inverts because Tony sees Jackie doing a bunch of chuckle-headed shit, getting involved in organized crime, flitting around with floozies and so forth. Then, what's another major plot point that happens? Janice is back in the picture, but she's just kind of in the background.
For some reason, I always think the boyfriend or Beyonce is like a narc or something like that. Like he's pretending to go to sleep. I don't know.
He is a narc. He's a narcoleptic.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
So, trying to think of what else major plot points happen. So, I think that's most of the major plot points that happen.
In that episode, yeah.
Well, just in most of the season, they kind of set the seeds up. And then we get some of the stuff at the FBI at the end of the season, where, again, they just kind of touch base with them. Like they do at the beginning.
It's pretty interesting. They always do that towards the, pre-ultimate episode or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They started the season off with it, and then they just kind of let it simmer for a while, and you forget about it. We also learned that one of Tony's other captains we learned that in the first half, though. I don't think they come back to it, though.
About what?
Well, don't we learn in the first half of season 3 that one of the captains, the guy with the glasses and the receding hairline, that he's an informant? But they don't come back to it.
Oh, yes, yeah. What happened to that?
I don't think they come back to that this season. It does come back around, but...
Huh.
So those are most of the major plot points. I think some of the more interesting dynamics between characters are pretty much at the forefront of this season. Like there's an episode with Chrissy and Polly when they get caught in the Pine Barrens together.
It's a pretty good episode.
It's a great episode.
Yeah.
You have some Ralph and Jackie. And
it kind of tells you what Polly's kind of character is, right? He starts the trouble and then kind of blames it on Chris.
Yeah.
And it kind of escalates it, like, to the point where, like, you're just gonna fucking choke me out in my sleep, aren't you? I heard you what you're saying.
Yeah, the best thing about that episode is it starts off with them being tough guys, and then as it progresses, like they get lost in the Pine Barrens, they don't know how to find their way out. Paulie
Been in the army for 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. And then Paulie loses his shoe. Christopher is hungry, and they're just like sniveling little children.
Yeah,
like within a few hours. And they basically act like they're gonna die, and they're just like so bad off, and it's like, yeah, it's
pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, but not for like supposed tough guys. It shouldn't. They turn into whiny little girls very quickly, and yeah, like I think they start to kind of, with very little screen time, give some characters, like I mentioned, the therapist I almost called her Meadow, that. Like that guy gets one scene, and I think he's great in that scene.
Yeah, that dude was awesome.
Yeah, I wanted more of him, just like I want more of the guy.
I'd be kind of curious if he was an actual psychiatrist. That, like, I don't know. Is he somebody famous? Because it seems like he is.
I don't know.
I don't know.
He's just got a lot of gravity to his personality.
Yeah.
He's good. And so there's that guy. There's the guy that is the friend that Tony has business dealings with, that leads Christopher and Polly to end up in the Pine Barrens, which is they go to collect some money for Syl from this guy who's like a friend of Tony's business associate. He owes Syl some money. They go to collect that money. Polly gives him the business. He gets rude, so
being a dick.
Right, so they end up killing him. And
killing him.
Right. It turns out he's not dead, so then he fucks with them, hits Chris with a shovel, and then runs off and
killed like 13 Czechoslovakians.
Yeah, but like the couple of scenes with his buddy talking about like their friendships and like and all that, it's like that's like I want more of that guy too. Like he's got like an interesting personality. They start injecting kind of smaller characters in there that kind of flesh out the relationships that some of the main cast have. Some of those characters are really more interesting than some of the, like you said, AJ and Meadow aren't terribly
Yeah, I fast forward through all that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't find it terribly interesting.
It's really not. It kind of just informs the context and the conflict between Tony's mafia family and his actual family. It's like we were talking about the other day, where he's like holds up this concept of family, but then really operationally he really doesn't.
No.
He doesn't really have anything. That doesn't pay attention to his kids. He doesn't pay attention to his wife. And that all culminates when he starts seeing Gloria. And Gloria is
it's just a fucking hot mess.
Yeah. Well, but in a lot of ways she's not, right? That's why he's attracted to her. Melfi points this out, because she's pretty smart, and she's obviously very independent, and she's successful.
There's a facade of independence, though, right?
Yeah. But I think that plot thread with him finally cutting things off with her, because he realizes that she's, like his mother, basically, is pretty well handled throughout the few episodes that she's in.
Earlier in the series with the flashbacks with Olivia, like how crazy she was in her younger years, and then seeing that with her, it's like, whoa, they're just carbon copies of each other.
Yeah, she antagonizes him. She has like this, complex about like, oh, poor you, and she, just feels like everybody's shitting all over her all the time, and any little slight, she.
Well, I don't blame her for like getting really upset of being 3 hours late to dinner and then just leaving right after you get there.
Sure,
but the whole like outcome throwing a steak at him and all that shit.
Yeah,
that's a little too far. But I understand
that's what she always does.
Upset.
It's like she always too far.
Yeah.
Like she gets miffed that Tony lies to her about Arena calling. Arena calls the boat, when they're on the boat. And Tony lies about it, and then she fucking freaks out and throws his present out the window, and like, you know, and all things considered, when you really look at how Tony handles most of her shit, it's pretty measured.
Yeah.
It's pretty like, and he even, you know, he lies to her, but then he immediately comes clean about it. You know, he does tell her the truth. He does give her the benefit of the doubt most of the time. He handles that situation pretty well. You know, when she flips out, Tony thinks for a second maybe that Irina slashed her tires on her car, and Gloria freaks out, and he's just like, look, you know, I'm a grown man. I've had other lovers. You know, this is kind of how it goes. I don't really have any evidence that she did this, but... I mean, he also kind of caps it with, like, last time I slapped the shit out of her, which is bad information to give Gloria.
Yeah.
He arms her with that information that...
I'm gonna goat you.
Yeah. And you can push my buttons in some way, and I'll react in a way that's whatever. But I think that the way he handles it, too, is very fucking gangster. Like, he basically goes over there to break up with her because she throws his tantrum after he breaks it off, and she's like having a tantrum, and she's like,
call your wife.
Yeah. And then
he's like, oh.
he like goes over and he's like fucking like basically ready to choke the life out of her. And he gets the impression that that's like, you know, what she wants, because it just kind of feeds her neuroses. So he has that
and the whole thing, like death by cop type of thing that Melfi said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then he handles that tactfully in a fucking super mobster way, which is he has one of his lackeys go on a test drive with her and pulls a fucking gun on her.
Yeah, that's pretty gangster.
And he's like, you just remember, the last thing you see won't be Tony's face, it'll be mine, and it won't be cinematic. And she's just like trembling in fear. It's like, that's fucking gangster, dude. Like,
and it's kind of a juxtaposition of him grabbing groceries and driving off at the end of the episode. It's like, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that whole dynamic, with the progression of that relationship, and kind of how it illuminates Tony's pathology toward his family, and like his attraction to a certain stripe of women, and that comes out in therapy, where Melfi even like kind of pushes him a little bit to like, why do you like these sort of women? And she even calls him out, like, like, you won't ever leave Carmela. She might leave you, but you're not ever going to leave her, because you're just not that type of guy. And so yeah, they're starting to dial back on the therapy sessions now at this juncture in the series, and it seems like the you get in therapy from him are more meaningful. Like, you're actually getting like, here's something that maybe needs a little context. And you get like more of a build up with Tony, instead of like one incident happens and then you get a scene of him in therapy talking about it, and this and this and this. So it's like,
well, it makes it more interesting because Melfi knows both of those people,
right?
So she knows how crazy she is, and knowing that, just trying to figure out, because if it's Tony telling her, like, describing her describing how that girl is. If he's lying at all. Yeah. But she knows both sides now.
Well, and she even gets kind of frustrated because she knows that both Tony and Gloria are lying to him.
Well, at first.
Yeah, and then she gets all pissed off and like... Yeah. I think that kind of sheds some light on her character too, where like her son calls her and she's at wit's end about like her profession and her patients and how much she can't stand any of them, and she's, you see some of her therapy sessions now with her like hyper Jewy fucking like overly academic psychiatrist, and then she's railing about it, and then her son's like, yeah, I need to buy some expensive books, and it's like, all right,
I got you.
I'll keep going, I guess, a little bit. So I'm trying to think of what else, if any. We don't really get much more of Syl the rest of the season, do we?
No, not really.
Not after University. It's mostly Joey Pants and then the Jackie plot line, and that plays out throughout the season. I think that's a pretty good little like trail of breadcrumbs, where like Jackie is getting annoyed with, he's just kind of a dope, and so he can't really hack it in college. And then he kind of starts seeing Meadow, and then, he kind of loses interest in Meadow very quickly. Like, she's, like, sick. A good way to show that she was kind of starting to too is that they're playing Scrabble and
ass.
It's just like ass and poo, it's like she's just looking at all the things he plays. It's like, this guy's a fucking dipshit. And
Oblique?
Hey, no fucking Spanish. It's like, yeah. But yeah, so it all culminates where he hears a story from Ralph about how Tony and Sil
got their come up.
Got their and Jackie Sr., how they all kind of made a name for themselves, and he didn't go on to heist the poker game or whatever, and so Jackie gets this idea to stick up a poker game that's Ralphie's game.
I love the lead up to the thing where they're watching a movie. It's like, we gotta call this dude, and there's like, this is my favorite part right here. Yeah. Just get us a pizza, and just face the black, and
it just comes back to him later. They're still watching TV.
Yeah,
he's like, wait, what are we doing? It's like, just fucking dipshits.
A little bit later in the season, their timeline is kind of weird, especially during the funeral. Well, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but the whole like them shifting a couple scenes, like after the funeral, and like there's like weird displacement where they go to the mother's house. They're talking. People are at the restaurant. And then they're back at the restaurant again, all this stuff. It's like very odd the way that they edit that whole episode.
Yeah, I don't really remember that like being particularly jarring. It happens sometimes where it's like you just don't.
And then the guys getting arrested, they're, get bailed within a couple hours. So like, oh, that's really fast.
Yeah, Chris and it's Chris and Polly, isn't it?
Chris, Polly, and Sil.
They get arrested for robbery?
No, gambling, I think.
Gambling,
because of the Super Bowl stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and they just like make bail, and it's kind of like, that's weird.
Yeah,
just like back out on the street. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so like they end up having to fucking kick off Jackie, and that situation brings into focus for Meadow kind of like what Tony does, because a woman at the funeral after they kill Jackie, because he holds up the card game and it goes poorly. He ends up shooting at Chris. Mm-hmm. He shoots Furio in the leg, and then he kills the guy that runs the card game.
Yeah,
one of them does. And there's some things where it's like Tony does very well and makes very good decisions, but then there's some things like this in particular, he kind of puts it in Ralph's lap as to like what to do about it, and it's like he should have come down swift and hard on it, and Christopher even calls him out about that. He's like, you preach all these rules that we have to play by, but we're the only ones that have to play by them. Like sure, he's Jackie's son, but he killed a guy that ran a card game. He took a shot at me. He shot Furio. We're fucking made guys. You can't let that stand. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of tosses it in Ralph's lap and lets.
Yeah, it's very interesting too that how Ralph handled it too. Like, he didn't outright say, I'm going to take him out. He's like, I'm just let him go, and just blame it on somebody else. Yeah. Like he was in the ghetto and some dude shot him. Yeah, and that's
that's part of what Tony does that, because he knows like, Ralph is dating Jackie's mother, and so he, doesn't really want to have to like
deal with him,
fuck up that whole situation. But it's like what's got to be done's got to be done. And we're starting. It's Vito, I think. Vito actually is the one that whacks him. We're starting to get Vito's starting to come into the forefront a little bit more. He's the guy from the fucking the donut shop. And remember I was like telling you later, the original customer when Christopher shoots that guy in the foot.
Ah, okay.
It's that guy. It's that actor.
All right.
He's just a different character now. So you just bring him in.
So I don't know. There's a guy outside. There's some weeds on the street. I don't know.
I don't know. But yeah, he's a weird. He's kind of like a. I don't know. He's a weird character. The introduction to his character when they start fleshing him out a little bit more. It's like he's. But yeah. So Jackie has to go, which is kind of a trend. You're getting to the end of the season, people kind of start dying.
Yeah.
It's like almost every.
I was actually surprised Ralphie stuck around. I don't know why I thought he'd be like, oh, this guy's gonna be dead in the end of the season.
Well, it kind of helps that he gets made money, and so I think that kind of puts their puts their beef on the back burner. Each season kind of has a wild card.
Yeah, I thought he was a wild card.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
And so you kind of were like, oh, well. I mean, he is kind of in the beginning, you know.
Yeah,
but then you just assume, like, okay, if he's the wild card for this season, then he's got to go. And so it doesn't really play out that way, which is kind of
yeah, because at first I thought it was going to be like a Richie type of character, like super loose cannon when he was all coked up, quoting the Gladiator anytime.
Well, which he is, up until he gets made captain, and then he kind of dials it back a little bit.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah. And, but yeah, so Jackie dying and that woman at the funeral kind of confronting her with the notion that, you know, that Jackie getting mixed up with Tony, and that basically is why he's dead. She's starting to have to deal with that, and they do it kind of this dichotomy between her sensibilities and her education and like kind of this old world like mafioso kind of way where Junior is singing at the restaurant after the wake and she's
throwing shit at him.
Right, she's like mocking him, and then like she storms off like an impetuous child, and then Tony just kind of seems to shrug that off. He says, "Go back in the restaurant," doesn't he?
Yeah.
But AJ's behavioral problems come to a head by the end of the season.
How dumb is that fucking kid, man?
And they're going to send him off to military school.
Yeah.
But then it is revealed that he panic attacks. Mm-hmm. We saw it a little bit, I think, early in this season.
When he was playing football.
When he plays football, right? Like, he gets overloaded with stress. And, you know, it's just a tick. And so we get some of Tony's guilt about that when he's...
Well, yeah, because he lived like a privileged life. He gets whatever he wants. He's kind of like insulated from the real world. And when push comes to shove, you just fucking can't handle it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know that there's any validity to the fact that panic attacks are hereditary, but we know that his dad had them, and then Tony has them, and then AJ seems to have them, and so he kind of...
probably bad coping mechanisms. That's probably what it is.
Maybe. But, you know, he kind of blames it on genetics, you know, and so he blames himself. He's got, I think he says he has his putrid gene, right? That,
and Melfi says it's like when people refer to the actions through their genes, it's sort of self-loathing.
Yeah. And so that's kind of an interesting progression. That's why I don't, like, I think there's just enough with the kids that it, like, keeps me somewhat interested because it illuminates different stuff about Tony and Carmela and all that. Like, so when a big theme this season is like his worlds bumping up against each other. Mm-hmm. Gloria gives Carmela a ride home because she knows that it's Tony's, because she's at the dealership, but Carmela doesn't know who she is, and then she calls the house, and you know, it's just like passively letting Tony know, like,
I know.
Yeah, like, oh hey, I'm like interacting with your wife, and so it's like this.
Her from the get that he's married.
Yeah, he knows. She knows that he's married.
So what?
Yeah, she even says it in a.
Oh yeah, it's like that
in a non-ironic way.
Yeah, the zoo thing.
No, after that, like after she takes her on the test drive, she says in a non-ironic way, it's natural to be curious about the significant other of the person you love.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's like she says it without, like, she breezes right by it, like the significant other of the person you love. And it's like, that's fucking weird. Like, this is the thing that is a commonality or something with you.
And she hates being treated as a guma when she knows she is.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like colliding, and then basically because of the creation of those dichotomies, I think is a strong focus. You know, you have it with Jackie and college life and mafioso life, and then you have there's a dichotomy there, right? Like, he's being pulled in both of those directions, and then he's the son of a mafioso guy, but then, you know, he's not really in that, and so, like, those worlds have to collide and something has to give. Same thing with Meadow. Same thing with, you know, AJ and Carmela and Gloria, and, like, you know, with all the central cast, that's like a good through thread. And this is the first season, I think, where it's like you can pull those themes out a little bit easier. The first two seasons, they have like smaller arcs over like 2 or 3 episodes where they have like themes. but then they kind of resolve them, where this feels like more of a season-long arc, with a bunch of smaller arcs in there that all build and culminate toward that. And to me, that's like really good storytelling. So I think that's part of the reason that this season stands out, and it has a tendency to get better because they use those writing skills on future seasons, where it does the same thing, where it's small arcs building over a large plot arc. And you have worlds colliding too, with at the end of the season, the FBI brings in Adriana, right? And so that's
probably gonna play a really big part.
Yeah,
next season.
So she's now an informant. They pull her in, or she's not an informant yet.
They put a mole in there.
They put a mole. Okay, well, I guess I kind of ruined part of the plot. But so they put a mole in, and so
she doesn't have the wherewithal anyway. So she's just giving information.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm like, when Christopher's telling me, and then Tony,
yeah,
it's like, I look like a fucking whore. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Want to get some coffee?
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck, I fucking ruined it. Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, bro.
She becomes an informant. I think it
I don't think I want to watch any more of this now. You ruined it.
I think it happens pretty early next season, though. And it's like one of the first few episodes or something. But yeah, so they put the mole in there, and so it's like, again, like with these separate spheres, and they're kind of coming together because it's, it has to inevitably. It's like nice family life, crime, those that monitor the crime, all those spheres, like they have to be.
Yeah. Also, I like the part we kind of skipped over, the Christmas episode, where they had the flashbacks of Jackie Jr. or Jackie and Pussy.
Yeah.
And then him remembering, like, this is the start where this happened.
Yeah.
Like missing, sit downs and all that stuff. And actually, it was a pretty good. I was kind of impressed, like, with the wig they put on Tony, because it looked pretty natural. Yeah. And then juxtaposed to the next scene was like, oh yeah, they really did put a wig on him.
Yeah.
But Pussy looked a little bit more svelte.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, he's kind of working out.
Yeah, it's just like a little bit of tweak, because it's not supposed to be that long ago, but it's like enough long ago that.
Yeah, I'd say probably like 5 years, maybe.
I think that's what they said. I think they said 97 or 98. Or no, 95.
That was the OJ thing.
They said it was 95, so it's about 7 years prior. And I think it lets you know that Tony's processing things that are red flags. Now he's like, I should have known it, which means it's putting it in his mind to be kind of on guard. So it's like you have that kind of boiling, like you have this new plot with Adriana, which doesn't come along until 4 or 5 episodes later, but we already have it set up that Tony has been thinking about the things that are like hallmark, like things that he should have known that were red flags. And so they don't really come back to that this season, but they just kind of drop that little breadcrumb in there. Like, Tony is more aware of this now, and now Adriana is involved with an FBI agent who's like her friend now or whatever. Yeah. And so it's like they kind of leave that like to simmer with you knowing that those things will probably eventually come to a head. Yeah,
because it's interesting where they kind of leave the breadcrumb of Adriana owning or running a club now.
Crazy Horse.
Yeah, and they just leave it, and like, okay, has to show up sometime.
Yeah, and so, but to me, that kind of end caps something that that's part of the good storytelling that they do this season, which is, if you recall, previously she was kind of getting bored with just being like a maitre d' or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Hostess. And what is a maitre d'?
Isn't it the same thing?
Are they? Maybe they are the same thing. For some reason I was thinking, maitre d' is what you call somebody in the bathroom who like gives you towels and shit. But I think a hostess is also called a maitre d'. Huh. But like traditionally, like in this country, we would call that person a maitre d'. Huh. I think. But so she's getting kind of bored with that, and then she kind of forays into the music thing, and then that doesn't work out.
Yeah, that kind of triggered Artie, like getting a divorce, and then she starts to become a thirst trap.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Yeah, yeah, with Artie and his wife. That's kind of like almost like a D plot.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like Well, I like Artie. Artie's one of those characters that like doesn't get a lot of central focus for most of the series, but they do a lot to kind of develop his character, like just incrementally, because he's most of the life of the restaurant where they usually hang out, and it's like we could always just set any restaurant scene here, and we have an excuse to give you a little bit of Artie. It's like a slow drip with him.
Yeah,
and
whole thing with like it's like the dish that he gave, like green beans and mozzarella. It was like, no, it's not mozzarella. It's blah 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 blah. I just shipped it in. Yeah, it just tastes like mozzarella.
It's like green beans and mozzarella. Yeah, but yeah. So there's some of that with Artie where it's like he has this, crisis of identity where he ends up breaking it off with his wife, largely because kind of like just being around Adriana gets in his head, and partly because of you get the impression that he feels like Charmaine manipulates him because he has like this contrast between like him and then like Tony and these like guys, and he has this attitude like they're men or whatever because he only just sees that thin slice of it, and he's like rubs up against Tony like, but he's not like a tough guy, and he's not like whatever, he's like just a restaurateur and a family man or whatever. But we get a decent amount of his character in there. But I think that Adriana getting the club is kind of tying up that whole like we got to give her something to do. Yeah. Or she's gonna get antsy.
Yeah, I do love the part where they kind of introduced how the original owner lost the clubs, like the fucking guys, the losing the points. 1 point, he's kicking up there. It's our club now.
Nobody tell you to make it. And he goes, he's like, this is yours, baby. Whatever you want to do. This is Rocco. He works for you. Yeah. Like, damn. Like, they just kept him on, and they just, like, make him work for Adrian. And she's just like, oh, great.
Oh, thanks. There's some really good Furio scenes, too. I kind of love how when, after he gets shot, and he's, like, parking the car, when they have to sit down with Ralphie and Paulie. He's like, oh, I parked the car. Oh, and everyone just gets up. Oh, what's happening? Yeah. Like, they love him so much. Yeah. Like, anybody else, they wouldn't give a fuck, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Furio's great. Everybody likes Furio. Yeah. And they even tease him a little bit. Like when he gets shot and they go to the prick doctor. Yeah. He's like making fun of his like ladies' underwear or whatever. Yeah. Because he's like European, so he just kind of dresses like a European fag. He's like, but no, everybody loves Furio. He's good, but he's a little bummed that they don't like they give you a little bit of him, but like when he comes in season 2, you're like, yeah, like this guy's around, but he just kind of like falls into the background a little bit, like, but the scenes that he does have, like when in Second Opinion, where Junior tries to get like some different medical advice from somebody other than his doctor, and then his doctor kind of is just like, fuck it, like won't return his calls. And they go confront him on the golf course, and he's like, he slaps him in the head, you got a bee on your hat.
It's a stupid fucking game.
It's a stupid fucking game. It's like because he has like this rare quality to be both kind of like endearing but then also menacing sometimes, and sometimes he can be both, like he is there. Like, it's a stupid fucking game. It's like, yeah, he's great, and you see that like when he's around women and kids, like he's like really endearing, but then like when he goes into the massage parlor, it's like it's fucking
him making mozzarella with the cigarette in his mouth.
Right, he's just got that switch, I think it's like an interesting of dichotomy too, like his characters on that theme.
I lost my place. Or one part we were talking about earlier was I would be curious how much of an overhaul they did because of the actor that played Olivia dying in the middle of production. Yeah, like how much did they film, or how big of a plot point with the tickets were going to be? Were they just going to be like maybe like a 3-episode arc, or is it going to be, because it seemed like it was an arc, how big it was going to be?
Maybe. I don't really have, but I just have been better. But like, I mean, I was glad Olivia was out of the picture. It's just like every time she's around, I'm just like, it's like fucking excruciating.
I'm having panic attacks.
It felt like the right time for her to die too.
Jeez.
But it does seem abrupt in the series, which it's good that it's abrupt. But yeah, they didn't really build.
helicopter. Thing like that.
It's just her head starts to float away from her, so they're like, "Oh, we gotta kill her off because her head's floating now." But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was because they kind of rushed to get a plot together or whatever. They didn't have time to overthink it.
They did a good job.
Yeah, whatever. They didn't have time to overthink it or over-render it or whatever. It's just or maybe they just brought in new writers. Maybe that was an impetus to bringing in new writers.
Oh, did they have a writer's switch or something like that?
At some point in the series, I think right around this time, they end up getting new writers
and production. They got that look and feel. They finally found their it looks great.
Yeah, the texture of the world feels there. The editing is much better.
Oh yeah, a lot better. It no longer looks like something from the 90s. It's beginning to be that the start of the golden age of TV now.
Yeah, it's not as rudimentary. Lighting is better.
Mm-hmm. Color grade's great. Editing's a lot better.
The dialogue seems less forced.
Yeah.
Some of the dialogue seemed, especially in the first half, well, probably even all of season 1, some of the dialogue just seems stuffy.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think it's a little more naturalistic. Even with the kids, I think part of that's just that they're getting older, and so they're just better actors.
Yeah.
AJ in particular, he doesn't really have a lot of lines, and that's probably but just everything.
What's a gutter?
The thing, the rain. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't.
Let me fucking show you.
I like the ending to that episode where it's they're disciplining him, and then it's and they're sitting in the kitchen, and it's and really nothing is happening, and you're why is this shot lingering? And then in the background you just see the leaves fall down. You're oh, that's why. And it's and then it fades to black, you're just waiting for that little drop. They do a lot more clever camera work, I think, in this season. I think you started to see it in season 2, where they started to get a little more clever with the camera work.
Yeah, because everyone mentioned that, and I was I'm not seeing it. Not until recently.
Yeah, and I would say there's some episodes in season 2 where you start to see okay, they're using the camera more deliberately, and it helps that the editing is better. They're cutting the shots where they should cut the shots.
Yeah, cutting the fat out.
Yeah, and so it's this shot can stand to be a little bit longer based on where we are in the episode. Like I said, that shot lingers a little bit, but it's at the end of the episode. It also kind of signals to you where you are in the arc of the episode, and I like that, knowing kind of where everything is going. Where some of the in season 1 and even early season 2, some of the endings of the episodes just seem kind of abrupt, and that can be done toward great effect. If it's deliberately abrupt because the content matter is kind of stark. They do it in the Sopranos too, or Sopranos in Mad Men too, which has Matthew Weiner, who is basically from seasons 4, 5, and 6. He's one of the main producers and main writers on the show, and then he did Mad Men after, and you can see some of the skills that he sharpened on Sopranos and some of the writing carry over to that series, because his influence on the show is pretty substantial. It's the reason that he's more regarded as kind of he didn't give birth to Sopranos, but he kind of raised which is why who is the main guy, David Chase, right, who created the show. I mean, he hasn't really gone on to do much after that, but Weiner went on to do Mad Men, and I'm a second watch through of Mad Men, wall to wall. Man, I forgot how much I like that show. I gotta watch it through again, but I might need to amend. Mad Men might be better than Sopranos, wall to wall, because Mad Men starts good, and it's good all the way through. It's just the content matter, I like the mafioso content matter a little bit more, but when I go back and watch, when we went back and watched season 1, I was yeah, you're right, some of these early episodes, there's a lot of extraneous stuff, but...
I said before, I was I just want to see some gangster shit. I don't want to see some family ties stuff. I don't really care.
No, I get that, but here's the thing about all the family stuff.
Fucking family's important.
They're starting to weave it in more artfully now.
Yeah, like I was saying in He Has Risen, they kind of weave it in, and the pace is good, and then the frequency of it happening is very good.
Yeah.
But just sometimes when you're in the middle of the scenes, like, I really don't fucking care what Meadow's doing.
So that's what I meant with, like, the plot arcs of the season. So what they do well is, it used to be in the early episodes, season 1 and probably even first half of season 2, it was like there's an A plot, a B plot. They developed. And now they still have an A plot and a B plot, and sometimes they have a C plot for the episode. But more often than not, what it will be is, like, we're going to insert some scenes that are the B plot for the whole season. The season's B plot. And I think the family stuff is essential, because if it just played out like all mafioso stuff, it would... some of what the series is really driving at, which conflict between these differing ideals of ideas of the same person, and the different hats that Tony wears, which is all focused through the lens of him in therapy. And so if there's no family stuff, and the family world isn't starting to bleed over or starting to create different conflict that has an effect on Tony that bleeds over into his mafia life, and all three of those elements don't play off of each other, it just plays like a prolonged episode of Goodfellas, which is a great movie, but, you know, just doesn't have like enough meat to like hold an entire series together. And that's part of the reason I don't mind it, especially because it's not like, oh, it's an AJ episode. It's like, you just get like a scene here,
or
a scene there.
Lisa episode.
Yeah, it's a Lisa episode. And so, yeah, you just get like a little bit of it, and I think they kind of sensed that. Whereas before, it almost seemed like they were like, yeah, mafia stuff, and they're like, you know, we haven't really done anything with the family for a while. Why don't we just do like a whole episode where the B plot is, and you're just like, do I really want this shit? You know? And,
yeah.
You know, but they just kind of put it's like a little piece of fucking cheese on top of the sandwich every now and again, a little bit of it in there, and they just build it up. And I think it does accelerate a little bit toward the end of the series, with AJ and Meadow, like their plot threads. You know, they're just like watering those seeds, and they eventually kind of start to grow into their own plots, and they're a little more interesting because of it. But I think they realize that it's like, we don't need all this, like, you know, teen angst, adolescent bullshit. Like, we just need to show how it's affecting Tony and how it's affecting, like, whatever. But we don't need to flesh these characters out, because if we give the audience thin slices of them enough, they'll be developed enough characters by time we get around to actually wanting to focus on them in any substantial way.
When those kid actors like develop more chops, I think I'd probably like it a little bit better.
Yeah, and they do. Especially the guy that plays AJ, he kind of like changes into like a different person.
Because it's like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Whatever.
But you start to see some of the glimmers of it too, with like, remember last season where he was reading Nietzsche? Nietzsche. Yeah, he's reading Nietzsche. Mm-hmm. And then you know, he's also like learns about Christopher Columbus and kind of, you know, all the genocide and all that shit. Mm-hmm. So like those seeds are planted, and they kind of start to grow a little bit as he matures a little bit more. And because I think what they do show well is how much AJ kind of yo-yos. Like at first, well, he is a yo-yo. At first he's just like this total, like, fuck off, apathetic, like, whatever, I don't know. And then he kind of shifts into like some angst. You know, he gets like this kind of like angst phase with the whole like Nietzsche and God is dead and all that shit.
The Slipknot t-shirts.
Yeah. And then he kind of, you know, and he has the conflict with the boy at school. And then he learns about, you know, Tony and all that. And then he kind of transitions into becoming socialized, right? And that's causing him to act out. And you get a little bit of it in the previous season with the communion wine, and more in this season increasingly as he's like making friends. And then he transitions again into like a different... So they do a good job of like showing that he's changing as he's growing up, And the same thing with Meadow. I think that they show her growing a little bit more as her character progresses through college and the world of her, Ivy League school and then getting bits of like the family life. Like it almost seems like every time she goes back to Columbia and she's there for a while and then she comes back, she has all these new ideas in her head.
Yeah.
And she kind of like vomits them all over Tony and is like, hey, well, where's this coming from? You never had a bread sandwich from Vito's before?
It's all the liberal arts teaching those kids.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I don't mind it as much anymore because the pacing feels right. So
yeah. So far so good.
Big shockers this season, things that you didn't see coming?
Not really.
No.
Yeah.
Did you feel like at a certain point like, oh, Jackie's got to go?
Actually, I thought what was going to happen with Jackie Jr. that he was just going to chicken out with the card game because he doesn't have the balls to do it, and he just went overboard. He overcompensated for his fear.
Yeah.
So I thought what was going to happen. They're just going to actually not kill him, but maybe just send him away, like to Florida or something like that. Yeah. Save face.
But you were pretty surprised that Ralph didn't die this season.
Yes.
Like you thought he was just going to keep ramping up until he just eventually had to, like.
Yeah, because he was like on 11, like from the get go. I was like, what the fuck, is this guy going to calm down or what?
Yeah, and it's weird because like once he's actually a captain, he does kind of just seem to calm down. Like once he actually gets what he wants, because he's acting out because he. Yeah, but every fiber of you thinks that if this is the way he is when he gets what he wants, he's just going to be a bigger monster.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really happen this season. But we get a little bit of Paulie, too, getting disenfranchised with Tony and talking about maybe moving over to the Carmine's family.
Yeah, that's like the survivor in him. He's like, I'm not getting my due. I need to look for better or greener pastures now.
And that's what I like about Paulie in general is that you get the impression that he is a survivor. And
yeah, he talks about working with Tony's dad in the truck when they're in the woods.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, you're fucking old as shit, man.
Yeah, he's been around.
Would you say he's probably like in his mid-60s?
I would think, yeah, he's probably got to be, yeah, I would say in his 60s. Because he's not quite as old as Junior. Mm-hmm. So he talks about, coming up when, like, Junior, he was like a young made guy when, when Junior was, like, a big dude.
So apparently, like, Chris had, like, the fast track to being made. Mm-hmm. So I found that kind of interesting. I didn't know that. He was, like, on a fast track. Because I don't are the guys get made when they're, like, in their, like, early or mid-30s or something like that? Is that how it works in that universe?
I don't think there's like a hard and fast rule to it, but like, yeah, I mean, Christopher's only in his like mid-20s, and they kind of focus on that. It's part of what gives Jackie a big head about stuff because Christopher's young, and he's like, well, I'm Jackie April's son, and like
I don't mean shit,
and Christopher got made, and that's another thing that like they're good about like kind of pulling back with Ralph. Like he's a mega dick to begin with, but then like once he gets made captain. He doesn't seem he's talking about Tony and Syl and all them getting made and how he missed out, but he doesn't really seem to have a lot of animosity toward it or any, like bitterness. Like I'm kicking myself now, but like and even when he talks about Christopher, they're like he's just young to be made, and he's like, well, he saw it, he went out and he got it, he wanted it and he took it, and he doesn't seem to have like you think
he inadvertently planted that seed to like have him rob a game?
I've always wondered that every time I watch this series. Is I think he's just kind of largely oblivious.
Because he kind of sets him up with a gun. He's like, I'll give you a gun. Here's a gun.
I think part of it is, too, that he's trying to kind of get Jackie Jr. to warm up to him. Because Jackie Jr. doesn't really like Ralph. Yeah. And Ralph is sticking it to his mom. And he doesn't really like him. He tries to, like, get him to like him, and then it ends up going horribly awry, and he basically has to like make this decision to kind of get rid of him, and so that's I think weighs heavily on him, and I think that kind of comes out a little bit in the next season, even though it's never explicit.
And I think he set up having to stay in that project because Syl already knows where he is. It's like he's already here in this project over here. Why don't you just take care of him? He's like, no, Ralphie's gonna take care of it.
Yeah. And so I think that when some of the things that happen with Ralph next season, I think you could argue are his psyche not being able to really his psyche kind of starts acting out. We're not done with trouble with Ralph.
Okay.
Like, I'll just say that.
Okay.
But yeah, back to like what I was saying about Paulie is that like that's one of the things that I really like about Paulie is that he's like a cockroach, you know.
Yeah.
But up to this point in the series, I think it feels earned that he kind of goes over because he does get screwed over with that deal. Like there's a deal with who is it, Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph with the code.
Yeah, and he's expecting $50,000 and Tony gives him 12, I think. And he feels fleeced, and they do a good job the first, I would say from early season 2 until now, that like Paulie is a fiercely loyal person. Like he's always like, you know, doing what Tony says without questions, fiercely. Like that's what he does. He's a little bit of a snake in the grass to other people, but he is loyal.
Yeah.
At least to Tony, and now that he kind of got shit on a little bit because he is so loyal, and it's like, yeah, you know, if you're that loyal to somebody, and he's
just
not,
because he gave you a couple mil in the bank,
right? And he's, you know, that he is like a cockroach is that unlike a lot of other guys in the mafioso world, he doesn't have this attitude like he's always striving for the next rung. He's kind of like fine where he is. He knows his place.
he likes the lateral move.
Yeah, it's why he's loyal, because he knows his place. You know, it's like in the Legend of Tennessee Multisanti, where he's like, you know, what do you mean fucking arc? Here I am, you know. I did a couple years in the army, a couple more in the joint, and here I am, half a fucking wise guy. I got no arc either, kid. That's what life is, you know. He's just like, that's his attitude, and so he's not like overly ambitious. So it feels a little bit. It has a little more punch, and a little more gravitas when he does kind of like, you know what, fuck this shit. Like I'm gonna see about moving on. But that comes to a head next season too, and kind of it's an interesting way, let's say. So.
Okay. Cool. Got anything else?
No, I think that caps the season. Looking forward to season 4. I think season 4 might be my favorite season. Very, just like season 3 is pretty close, but like wall to wall, like each episode, it's one of the seasons that I don't know. Did you feel like when you were watching this season, like once you got into it, like you actually were like, yeah, looking forward to the. It wasn't as much of a chore to sit down and watch like a couple episodes back to back.
Yeah, the beginning of this season was pretty good. I ran through this pretty fast, but with the whole family dynamic thing, it was like, ugh.
I would say season 4 is like I probably could watch all of season 4 in like 2 days if I need, because there's like it's like all good.
Okay.
And
looking forward to it.
Every episode has like good dramatic tension, I think, and they start amping up that dramatic tension with each season past this.
All right, cool. That's it. That does it for this week. Remember, stay home if you're sick. Come by if you thick. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Mikey and the Press Pass podcast. Consider subscribing. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere where you can listen to podcasts. And you can also write us with any ideas, suggestions, or horrible burning criticism at mikeyandthepresspass@gmail.com. Thank you.